Hello, I'm Jarod Perry-Richardson, and today is March 1st, 2014, and I'm the cameraman.
So Tyretta, tell us about yourself and your family.
Well, my name, of course, is Tyretta Harris, and I live on Shawview Avenue, and I've been in East Cleveland for about 38 years. We moved, a little longer than that, actually, because we moved on Shawview in '76, and prior to that, we lived on the corner of 135th and Shaw, and I was a little girl then, so I can't remember exactly when we moved there, but yeah, I've been in East Cleveland all my life. I have two children, 23 and 17. My 23-year-old is in community college, and my 17-year-old is at John Hay High School in their School of Science and Medicine, and this is her junior year, so she'll be graduating next year.
And before you moved here, where was your family living?
We lived in Cleveland,
Okay.
yeah,
You lived.
on Ullman Avenue,
Where's
like
that?
in the Glenville area,
Okay.
yeah.
And who moved? Who was that who moved with you? Was it your mom and dad?
Mom and dad, yes.
How many siblings did you have?
I have 5 siblings. I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters.
So how old were you when you moved to East Cleveland?
First grade, so 5 or 6, something like that.
Do you remember what the city was like then?
It was very nice. The home we lived in was like a duplex. So we lived on, our home faced Shaw Avenue, and the other side of the home faced 135th Street. And we had, good neighbors, everybody. It was like a community. Everybody helped each other out. The lady that lived next door to us, she was like a second mom to us. And as I said, it was a good community.
What school did you go to at that time?
I went to Chambers, and I remember our principal, Mr. Whalen, and a few years back we had a reunion for him, and he came, and we had a good time, just remembering all the fun we had when we were in elementary school.
What were some of those things that you did?
Well, I remember I used to, I was picked to do the announcements every morning, and I just remember because I was so small, I had to stand in a chair. But he did a lot for Chambers, and Chambers, was one of the more excellent schools in East Cleveland, and in fact, I think they won awards for one of the excellent schools in the nation. So it was good.
Now you mentioned one of the neighbors that looked out for you. At that time, was East Cleveland, what was the demographics of the city?
It was mostly black, but I remember when we moved on Shawview that there were about 3 Caucasian families that lived on the street. And slowly, they moved up. And in fact, we still have a Caucasian family on our street. Well, his mom has since passed away, but he still lives there.
You said 38 years. So what year, when you moved here, what year was that exactly?
Well, if I was 5, I'm 52 now, so
The same age.
yeah.
All right.
If you count backwards. Yeah,
To do the math.
you do. You really do.
So, what was like for you like that back then? In East Cleveland or just in general?
In East Cleveland, it was, again, like I said, when we moved on Shawview, of course, we made some lifelong friends from there, and going through the school system, I went to Kirk, now known as Heritage, and I went to Shaw, and I was in the band and in canteen council, and so life was good, especially, when I was in band, we did a lot of things. We did a lot of traveling, saw a lot of things. So it was a lot of fun.
What instrument did you play?
I was a highlighter. So
like a
dancer,
dancerette?
dancer,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. And where'd you travel?
We went to Florida. Prior to my even getting in the band, though, they had gone to Jamaica, and we were hoping that that would happen again for us, but it didn't. We went to Florida. We went to Atlanta to see, the HBCUs there. And we went around the time that they were having their homecoming, so we got to see all the festivities, and we were so awestruck. We saw the fraternities and the sororities and the football games and the marching band, and we were really excited about that because, of course, we were in the marching band at that time, and we performed and participated in a parade. So we had a really good time, and then we went to Disney World when we went to Florida, so that was really good.
What grade was that?
That was, I want to say 10th or 11th grade. I think it was 10th, though. And we had a huge band. We had almost 200 members, so we had a big sound.
Similar to the band now? Was it bigger or more?
Oh, it was much bigger. We had almost 200 members then. And the band now is small, but they still have a big sound. And I support them, every year when they have the Battle of the Bands.
Have any of your kids been in the band?
My oldest, she was a highlighter for one hot minute.
You talking about Taylor?
No, Danielle, my oldest. But she didn't stay long. And Taylor, she's not in the school system in East Cleveland. She goes to John Hay. So
When you were growing up, what were some of the fun things to do here?
I always tell my kids they don't know how to have fun because, some of the simple things that we used to do, like hide and go seek and jump rope and, playing football in the street, basketball, those types of things, they don't do that like they used to. The kids are so into their phones and the computers and the TV. They don't go outside as much as they used to, or as we used to, rather.
Do you think that technology played a role in that, or do you think there are other factors?
I think technology definitely plays a role in it. We grew up where we did a lot of things manually, and the technology is so advanced now. I think the kids they grew up with the technology. We grew into the technology. So I think technology has a lot to do with how the kids interact now.
That's a good way to put it. I guess what I'm wondering is also, in addition to the technology,
Mm-hmm.
if there have been societal pressures to not let kids do those kind of things that they used to do. Like, no, go ahead and say what you want.
No, I was listening to you.
Oh, I just know, when I was a kid, I lived in Mount Pleasant, I could take my bike and go right up to Shaker, which
Absolutely.
is and be gone.
Yeah,
until I
all
came
day.
back.
Exactly.
And a little kid, I wasn't like really old.
Right.
I wasn't even a teenager yet.
And you're absolutely right because it was the same way for us. You could literally be gone all day long, and Mom didn't worry because we didn't have the crime or the things that are happening now, where people end up missing and you never find them, or what we found with Anthony Sowell, or what we found with Castro, where he had held those girls hostage for so many years.
Or the young man who was here just this last
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you worry a lot, and my kids tell me all the time that I worry too much because I want to know where they are, because there's so much happening, and especially with the guy that killed those girls in East Cleveland, that really amped me up for that. So, and even my oldest daughter, she works at Beechwood Mall, and I have gotten so paranoid to the point where, if it's dark, I'm going to pick her up because I don't want her, walking the streets at night because it's just too dangerous. But yeah, that does play a role in, I think, the kids, even, being able to play freely. They can't do that because there's too much going on.
In what ways do you think East Cleveland, or do you think East Cleveland has changed over time?
Oh, my
Can you
God.
explain that answer?
Absolutely, it's changed. East Cleveland, I remember when we had one of our class reunions, and some of the people came into Cleveland for the reunion, and I remember some some of them saying East Cleveland looks like a war zone. And that makes you sad because, especially being a lifelong resident, I've seen the changes, and it's not been for the best. It's been for the worse. And a lot of that, I'm sure, is due to our revenue base has been decreased significantly. And so when you don't have the businesses in East Cleveland, you don't have the revenue. You can't, fix up the buildings. You can't, the homeowners, a lot of them are elderly, so they can't, fix up their homes like they want. And so, yeah, East Cleveland has changed a lot. I'm hoping that things will get better for us because I don't see myself leaving anytime soon. So, yeah, I do hope things will look up for us.
Why don't you see yourself leaving?
Just because I grew up here and I'm comfortable here, and I love the city. I love the schools. Like I said, the marching band. So I don't see myself leaving.
So now I ask this question as somebody whose kids also don't go, because you have one daughter who's at Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
She graduated? You said
She graduated from Shaw.
And then you have others that are still in these Cleveland schools, and then you have Taylor.
No, I only have two children.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking about your family of 5.
No.
Okay, so okay.
Those are my siblings.
Giving you some more
Right.
So you said you like the schools, but you chose to send Taylor elsewhere.
I don't like the curriculum. Taylor was in East Cleveland schools until she graduated from Heritage. And when she was at Chambers, she was challenged. The teachers that she had, and she's been in honors classes from day one, and her teachers challenged her. And the curriculum at Chambers was such that, she almost felt like she was struggling sometimes, especially in her 6th grade class. But when she went to Heritage, I just felt like a lot of that fell away, and the curriculum was such that they didn't give a lot of homework, and the teachers weren't concerned about that. I was. And things came to her too easily, and with Taylor, I noticed that if she's not challenged, she becomes lackadaisical, and she'll do stuff at the last minute, and I didn't want that for her, and I saw where she was slipping away, and I didn't want that for her, and so I just explored other avenues for her education.
On that point, now we have a Cleveland school that's been praised up and down, the STEM school, the
Mm-hmm.
city's Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the idea of our kids staying in East Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
but being affiliated as much as possible, whatever could happen with that school? I'm talking about MC STEM Square,
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland Park.
There was a waiting list, because that was one of the schools that I had considered, but there was a waiting list, and we weren't sure she would be able to get in.
But my question is, what do you think about if it were possible for us to actually, for East Cleveland schools to
Mm-hmm.
actually start collaborating? That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure, why not? I mean, that gives the kids bigger opportunities, other opportunities to do greater things with their life, and especially with their education. And, being from a small town and then leaving, say, for instance, going away to college, and you go to a school such as Ohio State, that's almost a rude awakening for a child that's come from a small town. And then they have to assimilate themselves into this huge campus. So, and I remember when I graduated from Shaw and I went to Bowling Green State University, and that was a huge transition, and I'm not saying it's not a huge transition for anybody, but just because I feel like, again, coming from a small town, assimilating myself into a college life and, meeting other cultures, or, being involved with other cultures. So if you can, the earlier you start with that, I think it benefits the child.
I want to roll back to your childhood.
Mhm.
Now, can you tell me your birth order? Or like who was where?
I'm the second oldest. I have a sister a year older than me. Then I have a brother that's 2 years younger. Then another brother that's 4 years younger. And then I have a sister that's 12 years younger than me. And I have a brother that is 14 years younger than me.
Oh, the surprise kid.
Yes.
So what was it like in your household growing up?
Oh, it was noisy. It was noisy. There was always something going on. And, you know, the girls had one room, the boys had their room. And, you know, and I live in the house that I grew up in. So with 6 kids, it gets pretty crowded. But we made do. And because I have, you know, younger siblings, 12 and 14 years younger than me, you know, I went away to college when I graduated from high school. So that, of course, shrunk the household size. But, you know, just even coming home for the weekends, trying to fit in. Where am I sleeping? You know, that type of thing. But, you know, you fit in and you adjust.
Are your parents still alive?
Yes.
They live in the house too?
No, they live in Warrensville now.
Oh, okay. They bought a house out there?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that in terms of the changes that East Cleveland has experienced
Mm-hmm.
since you grew up,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe revenue loss had something to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think anything else that contributed to that?
Sure, the crime increased. You know, there was a lot of drugs and crime in East Cleveland, especially in the 80s and the 90s. And I think, you know, you don't see it as much now, but it was just so prevalent around that time. And
You said the 80s and the 90s.
mm-hmm. Yep.
What do you think made that happen?
I just think the drugs were prevalent just about everywhere. And because we were a small town, mostly minority, it infiltrated its way in. And it took a long time to get rid of, you know, to get it out of here. Like I said, it's not as prevalent as it used to be, but it was really rampant, you know, around that time.
And what would you say contributed to, you say it's not as bad as it was, what happened to make that whole drug scene die down?
Well, I think one of the things that they did, they started bringing in the sheriffs from I think it was Thursday through Sunday.
That was under Tyretta when she was, after honor work,
Mm-hmm.
went to jail, and she was a city council person.
Right.
And then she became the acting mayor.
Right. And so I think that helped tremendously to get rid of a lot of that, because you could just drive up the street and see the drug boys on the corners, you know, and you don't see that anymore. So that I think helped.
Do you think racism has personally impacted you, and if so, how?
Not so much inside the community as it has impacted me outside of the community. Like I said, when you leave your community and you go away to school and you are come in contact with other cultures.
When you say other, do you mean like all others, or are you talking about white people?
Mostly white. But you know, when you're in college, you know, I went to school with some Africans. I went to school with some Asians, and went to school with mostly white people. And in fact, there were some girls that lived next door to me. They were Caucasian, and there was I remember very clearly there was another girl that lived across the hall from us, and she her dad was black, her mom was white. And she would not speak to any of the black people that lived in the building, and anybody on campus, actually. She wanted to, she mostly hung out with the white people. And she would turn her nose up. She wouldn't speak. And it was horrible until one day she did something to make one of those girls mad. And they just shunned her, and she tried to commit suicide.
Oh, her white friends
Mhm.
shunned her.
Yes, they shunned her, and she tried to commit suicide. But, I mean, when I saw that, I thought, how sad is that? You can't embrace both sides of your family.
Kind of speaks to her relationship with her black parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, did she stay in school?
She left. She ended up leaving.
So then, what was the personal impact on you of being in that environment, or has race impacted you in any other way?
Let's see. It made me know that we always grew up with our parents always telling us in order to get ahead, we always had to do more than go above and beyond to get ahead, because people don't look at us the same way as they do anyone else, and you had to always do your best, and if you could do more, do that too. So yeah, that always played a role. And you could see where people were treated differently because of the color of their skin, and you felt bad about it, and even if you protested about it or said something about it, not much was done.
So can you recall one of those times?
I'm trying to remember. There was something when I was in school, and I can't recall it, the details of it. Let's come back to it.
Okay. Do you think that racism has impacted East Cleveland, and explain the response?
I think so, yes. With relation to how we're perceived. I'll give you a big instance. I worked at Key Bank, and one of my coworkers, who was white, he was telling a story about how his daughter's, I can't remember if it was her car or her purse. Her purse got stolen. And he said, yeah, and whoever stole her purse, they went to East Cleveland and went to some gas station in East Cleveland and used her credit card to fill up their car. And, he was just going on and on and on about East Cleveland. And he must have looked at me and noticed the look on my face, because he said, oh, I'm sorry, what? He looked at me and said, what's the matter? I said, I live in East Cleveland. And he was so embarrassed. He he turned 3 shades of red and just walked away. He couldn't say anything about that. I mean, there was nothing he could say to backpedal in any way. But it was just so funny, because he had so many bad things to say about East Cleveland, but I let him know that I'm from East Cleveland.
Now, I've lived here for, this is my ADD. I've lived here for 22 years, going on 23 years.
Okay.
But I still notice that people who are from East Cleveland have a very, I don't know what to say, a very, like, I'm from East Cleveland. Way of looking at things.
Yes.
So I feel like I'm from East Cleveland, but there's a thing from people who've been here a long time. It goes on, and a lot of pride.
It is a lot of pride.
And I feel very proud of this city as well. But I specifically want to speak to you as somebody who's been here since the 70s. And, Where do you think that comes from? That even to this day, especially people who still live here, but then even when I talk to people who no longer live here, lots of love, lots of pride.
Absolutely.
For this city. Where does that come from?
I think it's a sense of community, and a closeness that people feel, to each other as a citizen of East Cleveland, even as a former citizen of East Cleveland. So I think that's what it is. It was, you felt close to everybody, and everybody felt like family. So, and I remember one of my coworkers, because we have those all-Shaw reunions every year, and I always talk about it. And she said, I don't know what it is with you Shaw people, but you guys always find a way to come together. And I say, yeah, that's just how it is. So I think it's a sense of community. I think it's a sense of family, and that's what keeps us coming back, keeps us together.
Do you think that feeling still exists amongst people like myself or people who come after you all? Do you see that feeling still exists, or do you think it's changed in some way?
I'm not real sure, because I know for the people that are older than me, they still feel that same way. I'm not sure about, younger people that are younger than me. I'm not sure about that.
Like Taylor, for instance.
No, Taylor's out of here. Taylor wants to go away to school. And even my oldest daughter says, and we had this conversation this morning, it's so funny. I asked her, I said, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? She said, I see myself living out of the country. So not even just leaving East Cleveland, but she's, has aspirations to even leave the country.
Has she been out of the country?
No, she hasn't. But she has those aspirations. And I see Taylor being the same way.
Where do you think they get that from?
I don't know. I hope they get it from us, their parents. I did, like I said, we did a lot of traveling when we were in high school, and I talk about it a lot, But so, I mean, it's maybe it's just a sense of adventure.
Have there been any times when inequality has personally impacted you, and can you explain your response to that?
In the workplace, I feel, people are favored. And it may not even be because of race. It could be, well, I take that back. It is, even though we've made a lot of strides in the workplace,
When you say
we still,
black people?
black people, I still feel like, there's still a long way to go. You still don't see a lot of us. There are a lot of us in the higher positions in the companies, like the CEOs and the, executive, on the executive level. So you still don't see a lot of that. You do see some, but not as much as I think should be.
So when you say not as much as should be, are you looking at, like, compared to how many black people there are in the field and in the country or in the city, there's not the equal amount?
Exactly.
Promotion.
Exactly.
So can you recall a specific incident where you felt that you were being treated unequally?
Well, there was a position that I was interviewing for, and another white lady had applied for the same position. In fact, we were in the same department, and she got it. And I just felt like we had the same qualifications. Why not me?
did that position open up? I mean, that she has it now, but
Mm-hmm.
any other similar opportunities opened up?
Yeah, there have.
You've been able to advance?
Yes.
So if just on that, so in the advancement that took place, would you say the inequality issue resolved itself, or was there some other factor that played into why you were able to get those promotions?
I'm not sure because, sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know. So that always plays a role. And I can tell you that I have gotten positions because of someone I knew that helped me get the position. So there are other factors. It's not just race. It's not just qualifications. It's sometimes who you know that can help you along.
So then on that, would you say that it's true that part of the ways to combat racism or inequality or sexism or all of that is to build networks?
Absolutely. I worked in this one department. I've always been in banking. That's been my occupation for a long time. And I worked in this one department, and one of my managers, who was white, she commented to the person that I worked for. I was an assistant to this one guy, and he was black. And she commented to him, "She's so articulate." And I said, well, why would she say that? I mean, that almost sounded like an insult to me, because why wouldn't I be articulate? So I took offense to that.
So it's kind of like a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
Have you talked to your kids about racism?
Oh, sure, yeah.
What kind of things do you tell them?
That it hurts, and it will hurt, and you'll see it. And in fact, we were in a beauty supply store that was owned by some Asians some years back, and Danielle was looking at a magazine, and I was somewhere else in the store, and I noticed that one of the ladies was following her around. And, she would move from one magazine, and maybe she'd go around the corner to the other side, and the lady just kept following her. And finally I said, "Is there a problem?" "Well, no, we've just had issues with, some of the kids stealing." I said, "Is my daughter stealing anything?" "No, she didn't steal any." I said, "Well, so why are you following her?" And she made some comment but I was already upset at that point, so I didn't hear what she said, and we left the store and I told her, I said, "I'll never come back in here again."
Was that in East Cleveland?
No, it was in Cleveland Heights.
Speaking on that, since you brought that up, this isn't just something that happens in East Cleveland, but from where I sit, very few of our businesses are owned by either residents of East Cleveland or black people just in general. So was it always like that here? And speak on that.
No, because I remember when we lived on 135th and Shaw, Hayden Avenue had a lot of, there were beauty shops, there were barber shops that were occupied by black people. I remember the lady that lived next door to us, her husband, he owned a cleaners that was on Hayden. There was a store called Lester's, I believe it was, and he was black. So there were a lot of African American businesses in East Cleveland around that time. So yeah, but that's mostly gone away.
And when did that happen? Did you notice that it happened? I mean, did you notice it happened, and when did you, if you did, when did you notice that it was happening?
I didn't really notice it because, again, like I said, I was, small at that time. But it was when I got older that I noticed a lot of the businesses went away, the black-owned businesses anyway.
What do you think contributed to that?
I don't really know. I don't know. I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll ask if, well, do you think they were themselves, were they people who lived here and they just left? Or was it that the businesses, whether they lived here or not, they left? I mean, obviously they left.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I guess I'm back to that.
Well, I know, well, the lady that lived next door to me, her husband that had the cleaners, they moved away. And I think it was just, people just moved away, maybe. I don't know.
Why would they do that?
Well, some of them were older, so they may have retired, because her husband was also a preacher, and he became a preacher at a church in Steubenville, Ohio, and that's why they moved. So it was probably a number of reasons, maybe retiring, maybe saw a better opportunity somewhere else, or I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Do you think that inequality, like you were speaking about in your job, do you think that's had any impact on the city of East Cleveland? And if so, what would that be?
You don't have, we don't have I don't even know if we have any white people that work for the city of East Cleveland other than the firemen and the policemen. I'm not sure who's in City Hall because I haven't been there in a long time. But
Do have at least one person I know of in City Hall.
Okay.
Director of Community Development.
Okay. But I remember I used to work. I used to have summer jobs in East Cleveland, and I worked a lot, at least 3 years in City Hall. And I don't recall. I remember 1 year there was, what was his name? Was it Oliphant? Do you remember that name?
I've heard of it, but I don't know who's that is.
He was he a judge? I can't remember, but I know I worked there one summer and he was there. But other than that, I've seen, all, black city officials running East Cleveland. And I don't remember a time when there were white officials running East Cleveland. I don't remember that.
Okay, so that I got the number. I've had it for a while. You moved here in 1976.
Well, we moved on Shawview in 76, but prior to that, we lived on 135th, and I can't
Say when that was.
work the numbers backwards
Okay.
to tell you when we moved in there.
So you're saying from that time, you don't recall any white
I
city
don't.
officials? Okay. So my question was, do you think inequality has had any impact on the city? And if so, how?
Well, probably because the city was mostly run by blacks. I'm sure there was some inequality there, especially as far as funding and from the state or the federal funding, those types of things. And again, our perception or how people perceive East Cleveland is so negative. I'm not sure what the perception was back then because, again, I was young and I wasn't into politics and those types of things. But I think even now it plays a role.
So when you say perception, you mean you were speaking of people like the man who was talking about his stuff.
Absolutely.
What about the press?
Sure. And I've even on the news, they will report something that happened in East Cleveland, but it'll be some other part of Cleveland, not East Cleveland, but they'll say East Cleveland. And I think that's wrong because that just adds to the negativity the negativity of people's perception of East Cleveland. And even, I'll tell you a story. When Taylor was in Suzuki, do you remember when we went to Minneapolis?
Yes.
Of course, that's right. We rode together. And we saw that film at the convention, and that angered me because
Say out loud what they said.
the,
Just set it up, Tyretta.
okay. Miss Sloan got in front of the camera and said, "These children have nothing."
And where were we?
We were in Minneapolis at their international convention for Suzuki. And I was just so taken aback. What do you mean these children have nothing? I know the city that we live in is a poor city, but that does not mean every citizen in East Cleveland has nothing. And it just angered me so to the point where I couldn't wait to get back home so that I could talk to the principal and say, "Did you know this was going on?" And she knew. And that just made me more angry. And
Which principal was that? Was that
it was,
No.
it was who?
Was it Miss Kidd?
Yes, it was Miss Kidd. And
She knew they were gonna say that?
I don't know.
Just to clarify,
she
what did
said-
they show on this was Suzuki violin.
Suzuki violin.
Kids were playing in the violin group, Suzuki.
Exactly.
Rainbow Suzuki violin. What did they show in the video?
They showed parts of the city. Of course, they had to show, because our kids have nothing, that they had to show all these rundown buildings, vacant properties, litter everywhere, those types of things.
Did they show any nice homes? Or?
No, not at all, not at all. And that's what angered me so much, because every city has an area that is run down. Every city, I don't care where you live. But rumor has it also that some of the pictures that they showed were not even East Cleveland, was not even East Cleveland properties. It was somewhere else, because they wanted to show how bad these children had it, you know.
What was their purpose in showing that?
To garner support. I'm hoping that's what, or I'm thinking that's what she was trying to do. But it just, to me, why did you have to go that route? I didn't understand that.
What do you think the impact on the kids were to hear that?
I don't even know, because the kids were 6 and 7. I don't even know if it had any impact on them. I don't even know, unless they overheard us talking about it. And I'm sure they did, because we were pretty angry. But I'm not sure, you know, what kind of impact it had. Jarod, you were there, weren't you? Were you there? Yep. How did it feel to you, or do you remember that? See, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if they even remember that, or even if they do remember it, how they felt about it, because they didn't know enough about their circumstances to look at that and say, "That's not me."
What made you so angry?
Because I thought it showed a false portrayal of East Cleveland. Now, I know that, you know, our city is not as prosperous as it used to be, but there are still hardworking citizens in East Cleveland. You know, there are not just single-family homes in East Cleveland. There are two-parent homes in East Cleveland. There are people who earn a living in East Cleveland. You know, that's, if you're going to tell a story, tell the whole story, not just one side.
So you would have been okay with seeing some of the dilapidation?
Absolutely.
As long as they also show, you know, that there are some, you know, there's some prosperity in the city.
Exactly. I wouldn't have been, but here, again, her objective was to show that these kids have nothing. We need money, we need this, we need that. And I just felt that was the wrong way to go about it.
Did you feel that her remarks reflected on, well, how do I phrase this? Every child that was there was sent there by a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that her remarks, in addition to neglecting the reality of East Cleveland as a whole, in part of neglecting that, or not covering that, was also rejecting or not realizing that, you know, the family structures that exist in East Cleveland?
Yes, absolutely. Because where you have you know, single-family homes where there's maybe just a mother as the head of the household, that to people seems to say that there's some poverty there's disadvantages, no way out, that type of thing. So,
So are you saying that you could have that situation, or any multitude of situations that could look dire from the outside, but actually there's a loving home in that situation?
absolutely, absolutely.
We gotta take a break. I think she's spoken. So Tyretta, can you talk about a time when East Clevelanders fought for something?
Fought for something. I remember when they brought those red light cameras in. A lot of people were up in arms about it. I wasn't as opposed to it as most people were, because I thought that that would be a way to keep people from running those red lights and speeding through East Cleveland. So I thought that was a good thing, but it just seemed to me that it was more something to give the city some funds more than combating the crime or the purpose that it was initially stated.
Do you think that they've been effective in terms of slowing people down?
Yeah, they have. And I would hear a lot of people say, "Oh no, I don't drive through East Cleveland. I stay away from those cameras." But they have them everywhere now. So.
We were so successful at it. Mayor Norton got phone calls after we voted to keep those cameras. Other mayors saying, "How did you get them to say they want to keep those cameras?"
Yes.
You know, he scared us. That's what he did.
Yeah, he did.
Any other times that you recall people coming together for a cause?
No, I don't.
Well, I can think of a couple of things off the bat. Maybe that'll stir your memory. One was when the serial murders took place last summer. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I cannot remember that man's name. But I
yeah.
remember Jarod Terry, his youngest victim, and then here on hospital. So can you speak of those? Did you see any, or were you involved in anything around those two issues?
I went to a couple of meetings when they were talking about closing down here in hospital, because I thought that was horrible, the way that they did it and the alternatives that it left for us. You know, if you are in a situation where a life-threatening situation, and the closest hospital they can take you to as far as a trauma unit was Metro and Hillcrest, that's almost signing your death warrant, you know, really, because who can survive for that long if you're a gunshot victim or something like that? You need immediate attention. And we have university hospitals down the street, so why would they not go to university hospitals if they're that critical? You want to take them to Metro Health or Hillcrest? That just seems ridiculous to me. And so, as much as people talked about Huron Hospital, that was, it was our hospital. And I just felt like that was a big mistake to let that go.
Now, you mentioned Cleveland Clinic and East University, so Huron was a Cleveland Clinic hospital. Considering that they removed our one trauma center, because I could see them saying we're not filling up beds in the whole hospital. What do you think about the idea of a trauma center being built on the main campus, which would not be that far away from where we are?
You mean Cleveland Clinic? Absolutely. Why not? Why not? We need it.
So why not? When
Yeah.
we do have a higher rate of gunshot victims than other cities, why do you think they would not ensure that those people can be treated?
Probably don't care. I mean, I can't think of any other reason why they wouldn't. Maybe it's not cost effective for them. And most of these hospitals operate like businesses now. So it could be because of economics. But I think some of it is they don't care.
And then, again, in terms of people coming together, people did do that around the young women who were murdered
Mhm.
last summer. Do you have anything to say about that?
It was, it's scary to think that something like that, even in East Cleveland, can happen. You know, you hear a lot of people in other cities, especially affluent cities, where something horrific has happened, and they say, oh, I just didn't think stuff like that happened here. But I feel the same way about East Cleveland, especially where that was concerned. How could something like that happen? You know, and again, you know, after that happened, I was more worried about, you know, my two daughters. You know, where are you going? Who are you going with? What time are you coming back? You know, you're not walking anywhere. I'll take you, that type of thing. So, you know, a lot of people say stuff like that doesn't happen in my city. Well, I don't think stuff like that happens in East Cleveland. I mean, you know, that's something that was very horrific and something we had never seen before. So, yeah, stuff like that doesn't happen here either.
So specifically serial
Right.
murder. And so, okay, I'm gonna look that over right now. Do you think that the cities and the institutions that surround East Cleveland, so both the cities and the institutions, have had an impact on our city? Explain your answer.
I think they're starting to. I just think that they want to pick and choose what parts of the city they want to impact. Of course, there's been a lot of rumors about East Cleveland being merged into Cleveland, and there was even some talk about certain parts of East Cleveland merging into Cleveland Heights and certain parts of East Cleveland merging into Cleveland. And so it's kind of hard to imagine that East Cleveland will no longer exist if something like that happens. I was talking about that with one of my coworkers when they first started talking about it again, where East Cleveland would be merged into Cleveland, and he said, "Well, how do you feel about that?" I said, "Well, I don't feel good about that at all because that means East Cleveland goes away, and I'm so used to being an East Cleveland resident that that would be, to me, a tragedy if East Cleveland went away."
How so?
Because I feel like we would be swallowed up into, for instance, if we merge into Cleveland, we would be swallowed up into this larger city, and we would be ignored, basically. Our needs would not be considered.
When you look into the future, what do you see if you could just have the East Cleveland that you created for your vision? What would it look like?
We wouldn't have as many vacant lots. We would have more buildings, newer buildings, better homes, more businesses coming back into the community, more African-American businesses coming back into the community. And not even just so much African-American business, but just businesses, period, to make the city more prosperous. A better educational system. That's what I see.
What does a better educational system look like?
Well, like you said, you don't always have to do the same thing. You can, like you said, bring in people or have the kids go to, like the MC Square, where they would, have different opportunities to see different things and not just, open your books and memorize this chapter, we're going to have a test. I think education has to be different than that. And I don't think you really learn like that. I think all you're doing is memorizing something. If you're experiencing something, then you retain it better, I think.
So what do you say to the student who doesn't realize Or maybe they do. They realize they're in a bad situation educationally.
Mm.
Um,
Most kids, I don't think, care at that point, because most kids growing up, oh, I hate school, I'm just waiting for it to be over. I'm waiting to graduate so I can get out of here, that type of thing. I don't know if any of them realize the situation that the schools are in.
But what if some of them do? Because I know, I've heard that some of them do.
Okay.
So what can they do?
First of all, talk to their parents and see if there's anything the parents can do to help them, have other opportunities. There's a lot of things out there, like the kids have PSOP where they go to high school and they also go to Cleveland State or Tri-C, and by the time they graduate could even have an associate's degree. So those are things that are open to or available to the kids now. We didn't have that when we were in school. And
So you're talking about the educational opportunities that you didn't know about, that we didn't know about.
well, we didn't have those opportunities. I'm not even sure, in other schools they had those opportunities, but they have them now. And so I think it's a sharing of information, getting that information out there, because if our kids know more, they can do better.
So talk to me about the major issues that would need to be addressed in order to create the East Cleveland that you envision.
I think first and foremost, one of the things that needs to be changed is the perception of the city. And and I'm not sure how that can be done, except for you can't talk about it. You have to do some things to show people that things are changing. Certainly the education system in East Cleveland, bringing businesses back to East Cleveland so that we have a revenue base. But again, like I said, I think the biggest thing is the perception.
So you talked about the perception of people who don't live in the city.
Mm-hmm.
What about the perception of people who do live in the city?
Well, for lifelong residents, like you said, there is a pride about saying that you're from East Cleveland, but there are a lot of residents that are renters that may be here temporarily, that may not stay, so they don't really have that connection to the city. I think if you have more homeowners in the city that have a vested interest in their homes and the city, that would, I think that would help.
And what would you be prepared to do to make East Cleveland better?
I've always said I'd like to get involved with the school system, whatever, because I joined the Alumni Association, and they do things with the schools. And so I like that part of it, where you get involved with the kids. And recently I was invited to like a roundtable discussion about bringing different organizations together to show what opportunities our kids can get, as far as education is concerned. And so I plan on staying active with that.
Who's doing that?
Belinda Kyle.
Is that the MyCom
Yes,
group?
yes.
Okay. What kind of things are the alumni doing?
They were doing some tutoring. They did some scholarships. They do scholarships every year. And in fact, when they have the all-star reunion at the picnic every on the Sunday, or every Sunday is the picnic. They do it around Labor Day, and so Sunday is the big picnic, and they announce the scholarship recipients there. So they're doing some good things.
How much did they get, the scholarship recipients?
Some of them get, I think, up to like $2,000 or so, something like that.
So is there anything else you'd like citizens to know or to put in the public record?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. You have a question, Jarod?